Hello and welcome to the Horror Himbos podcast. I'm Patch, your local horror himbo. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm living in your walls. We're out of milk, by the way. Today is my first episode ever, so it's going to be clunky. I'm in my closet, my cats are fighting each other, and it is very cramped in here. Today I'm reviewing Men 2020, not Men the gender. If I was, I would give them, 0 out of 10. I will avoid spoilers, and first I will talk about general thoughts and also the trailers I saw before the movie, and stuff like that. So, first off, I think I enjoyed it. I think I did. It was gorgeous. The movie was gorgeous. The sound design was phenomenal. The colors, I adore that movies now are not afraid to experiment with color. Music was phenomenal. The cinematography was phenomenal. I think people expected this, but of course, I would like to mention it. If you are planning on seeing this movie or planning to listen to the rest of the podcast, be aware it deals briefly with sexual assault, and the whole plot is a woman after escaping a abusive relationship. So if you are sensitive to that, maybe don't watch the movie. I will try not to discuss it too in detail, like the violence, if it's at all graphic. Thankfully, the movie does not get too explicit. It is more implied. And it doesn't really happen, per se. Anyway, so, alright, the previews, the first one was called The Menu, and my dumbass thought it was Liam Neeson. It is not Liam Neeson. I have no idea who it is, actually. One moment. But, that looks pretty good. It looks like a sort of, Gordon Ramsay cult. Honestly, the first 10 seconds of it, I thought it was gonna be fucking about Gordon Ramsay's life, but no, it's a cult and they yell "yes chef," and it's people being way too into food, which me too, bestie. Next is Don't Worry Darling. It looks phenomenal. Olivia Wilde directing. Glad to see a woman. There's also the guy from The Boys, and he has the perfect face of, someone who is outwardly to the public a good person, but is actually, evil, and you can tell, and it's unsettling. It, of course, has Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. She was fucking phenomenal in Midsommar. She should win 1,000 trillion awards for Midsommar. So I expect, honestly, the best from her. Even if she just didn't give a shit, her performance in Midsommar earns her, she could just, go on screen and be I'm Florence Pugh, and I'm pretending to be someone, and I would be yes, fucking get it! Next up is Nope, by Jordan Peele. There was the actor from Get Out, Daniel Kaluuya, who was the main character in Get Out, and Steven Yeun. Those two, again, were in Get Out. Daniel was phenomenal, and Steven Yeun, I personally know him from Mayhem and from The Walking Dead, and he seems like a very energetic actor with quite a bit of range, so I'm excited to see him. And Daniel, again, he fucking carried Get Out. He carried the emotional core of the film, and of course the horrors through his eyes, such the main character in Men. This person carries the movie, so I don't think he is the main character in Nope, but I still have such faith in that guy. There was Thor, the original Himbo, in July. I'm not keeping up with Marvel movies. I don't give a shit about them anymore. I stopped watching them after Endgame because I ran out of energy. But I still love Thor, and I fucking loved Ragnarok. I might watch it. I don't know. There was a movie called Watcher, which is fucking hilarious if you know anything about, like, The Watcher from true crime. From Shudder. I love Shudder. I was alone in that theater. I mean, by myself. I wasn't fucking alone. There was like get this. There was like 100 men and like one woman and then me. Like, that's like vampires going to watch a movie about like Dracula and then reviewing it. Like, come on. They didn't sound like they enjoyed it. And there was like a guy sitting like behind me, and in the trailer for Watcher, the woman has a guy like sitting behind her, like leaning forward, and I was like, if this fucking guy leans forward, I'm gonna shit myself. Anyway, no, I don't know. I don't think I'll watch that movie unless it gets like really good reviews or something. Like, what convinced me to watch like Hereditary was like the reviews. Unless it gets like good reviews or like someone I personally trust recommends it, I don't think I'll watch it, but like, go ahead. There's Marcel Lachelle with Shoes. Cute, but I'm not gonna watch it because I spent $30 yesterday when I saw Men. Well, I spent $10 on the ticket and then $20 on concessions because a bitch is hungry. I didn't fucking eat the popcorn because I was so busy writing these notes. I wrote for 2 hours straight, y'all. 2 hours straight. What the fuck is wrong with me? In the dark theater. Like, my notes, I wish I could show my notes. They look so silly. Also, I just realized I misspelled gorgeous. I wrote George O.U. Anyway. Another A24 film. Staten Island guy. The guy from the Staten Island movie. I don't know his name, but my sister knows him, so I don't know. It's a whodunit called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And honestly, the dialogue was fairly realistic. It did sound like when I fake bicker with my coworkers. Hey, Christian. Like, I'm gonna fucking murder you. I hate you. Like, I'm not saying this to Christian. I'm saying, like, that's like kind of what they were saying, and it was obvious they were friends. And also the Staten Island guy goes, I look like I fuck, and that made me holler laughter. And they're like hiding, and the girl's like, what are you doing? She gets like, I got Xanax, do you want one? Fuck. Anyway, might see that one. And I like A24, and they're spitting out some good stuff. Yeah. Again, general overview of Men. It seemed kind of like, think Invisible Man or fucking Babadook. Just like a person's emotional journey, either dealing with abuse or death, and in this case both. Basically the premise is this woman is going to this rental, I think it's Airbnb, they never say it though, to this rental house for 2 weeks to sort of get away from her life and heal after her husband killed himself. So, and then, like, men fuck it up, you know. If you have trauma surrounding specifically men, or stalking, or abuse, or sexual assault, I do not recommend watching this movie. Also, the first hour and 30 minutes, a well-crafted film, but the last 10 minutes... Now, for some context, my favorite movie is The Lighthouse. One of my favorite franchises is Saw. I love weird shit, and I love gory shit. And that was the most strange and confusing last 10 minutes of a movie ever. And also my stomach turned. It wasn't specifically gore, it was something worse in my opinion. So last call before I start getting to spoilers. If you haven't watched the movie and still want to watch it, go ahead, turn it off, come back. But if not, here we go. I'm gonna just go based off my notes and, like, what comes to mind. So, first of all, when it goes back to the sort of catalyst of the film, which is her husband's death, it's always bathed in this gorgeous orange light, and so you always instantly know that's the scene, because the rest of it isn't really bathed in this orange light unless it is her thinking about this scene. Her nose was bleeding, and her, like, it just slow motion, her husband falls past, they're in a flat, as British people say, and she looks like they're a couple stories up, but he's falling from either the roof or something above them. And it's this really pretty scene of her driving. Her name is Harper, by the way. I don't remember her last name. Harper is driving, and there's this gorgeous landscapes, gorgeous soft colors. In scenes with nature, the green is very green. I love that movies are no longer scared of color. It's not like Saw, where it was everything is green, or before recently movies were really dull colors, and it kind of was bleh. So she's driving to this I'm thinking it's an Airbnb, to this like rental place, and she's listening to this happy music, and something really cool is the music in this, there isn't really music. It is, unless like specifically like she's listening to music in her car, and then the music stops when she shuts her car off. And I'm thinking that like I noted a lot when the music started and stopped. Most of the time it's just the noises of the scene, and there's no music unless like there is for specific moments. I wanted to point out Jessie Buckley, you did phenomenal. As if she's gonna listen to this. She fucking carried the emotional core of this movie, and you believe her terror and you feel it, and I love it. Rory Kinnear, I'm a dumbass, and I didn't realize he was playing like 90% of the men in this movie until I fucking looked up the cast later on. Oh god. So there's one other like actor that literally there's like fucking 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 actors in this movie. There's, oh god, honey, I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher your name. Papa Isidui. He plays her ex-husband James Marlowe. And then again, Rory Kinnear plays Jeffrey, who is the guy who owns the rental. He plays a cop. I'm pretty sure he plays the like naked man, who I will be calling Foxman for reasons I'll explain later. He plays like a little boy and a priest, and he did so well. I didn't even realize they were all him. I thought they were all fucking different people. Gail Rankin as Harper's best friend Riley. You did great. Again, as if she'll listen to this. She was very, very good at being a best friend character. Like, this feels like a person who is like one of my best friends, who is worried about me and is like, I'll drop everything and I'll come there and we'll have fun. Like, I have friends just like that. I did really fast before we like continue going on with the movie. It is directed by a man, Alex Garland, and again, it's like a vampire writing Dracula, but he did well, I think. I would have preferred this movie were written, directed, everything by women, because it is specifically about the experiences of not being a man in this society and how it impacts just like your thoughts and how you see the world. And you can't really get that authentic experience and be able to portray it without being an AFAB person. But I think he did well. It does show the, like, you have to be paranoid, and if you aren't paranoid all the time, it takes one time where you're not and you're dead or you're assaulted or you're kidnapped. And just like how draining it is, how constant this, just like men looking down on you, because the entire movie they're like, especially Jeffrey is like, madam, I'll get your bags, you go get the tea and I'll go check outside. And yeah, cinematography, Rob Hardy. I do not know too much about films. I fucking love films, but I don't know too much about the technical aspects. But whoever coordinated the shots in this movie, phenomenal. I think the best part of this movie is the acting and the colors and the shots. It is very well done. Anyway, back to the movie. So she comes in and it's like a giant, it's called the, whatever town it is, manor. And it's this huge house and it has they call it a garden. I'm pretty sure British people, one of my cats is trying to get in. You can come in, honey. The door's open. I know, honey. Come on. There's not enough space for both me and the cat, but she's trying. They call it a garden in the UK, I believe, but we call it like your yard or your backyard, so I'm still gonna call it a garden because that's what I wrote it down as, because I didn't have time to think while I was writing. Yes, I took notes during the movie, and yeah, it looks terrible and it's hard to read. Again, there's no music, just the noise of her walking, and she goes into the garden and she plucks an apple from the apple tree and eats it, and I was like, oh, fucking shit. It's the Bible imagery. Bible imagery is pretty overused, honestly. You can't show an apple in the film or in a book or in anything without people being like, oh, it's forbidden fruit. But I think it is meant to be the forbidden fruit, because literally Jeffrey is like, oh, you picked an apple from the garden? And she's like, oh, yeah, it's delicious. And he's like, oh, you can't do that, forbidden fruit. Oh, just kidding. So I think it is meant to be, like, the forbidden fruit. I've seen people say maybe perhaps it was the forbidden fruit of knowing freedom from the man who, like, had her in, like, an iron grip for so long, because everything after that is fucked. But honestly, it's at the start of the movie, so everything after the start of the movie is fuck. He calls her Mrs. Marlowe, and then she's like, no, it's just Harper, and she tells him that she's like, oh, where's your husband? And she's like, oh, haha, he's not here, we're getting divorced. She kind of says they're getting divorced, but really he's fucking dead. The colors, again, are very striking. There's red walls, and there's rooms that are, like, soft blue, but a lot of the walls and, like, the hallways and I think the kitchen are, like, a stark red. It's very striking and very nice. There's a piano room and a cloak room and, like, all other kinds of rooms. And it's really funny that, like, I watched a video about, like, rich people's houses, and they're like, oh, we have a flower cutting room. And it's like, bitch, I have 2 rooms. I have my bedroom and a toilet room. And then the common area that I share in my apartment, like, and you have enough rooms for a cloak room, a piano room, a flower cutting room. That's just very rich person chic, I suppose. Also, he says no scrumping. I don't know what the fuck scrumping is. If you're British, maybe you can tell me. The master bedroom that she is staying is pink and yellow, very soft colors. I just thought I'd point that out. He asks if she plays the piano, and she says, no, I don't. And he goes, oh, me neither. I was so confused if the characters were British or Irish or what, because I couldn't place the accents. I saw, like, the signs were, like, very, like, British, Irish, European sounding, like, town names, and she was driving on the right side of the car, and I was like, what the fuck? What are you? And eventually she says she's from London, so I think it takes place in England, Don't quote me on that. He says, oh, here's the key, but you don't need it. You don't need to lock the door. Fucking lies. You don't know. Literally, Jeffrey. Oh, God. Who doesn't lock their door? Even if you live like 1,000 miles from the nearest person, you're gonna lock your doors. Or again, maybe that's just being an AFAB person. I don't know. She talks with her friend, Riley, on the phone, and she says he's very country. And it's kind of funny to see a film that is very British, I believe. And just hearing, like, the stereotypes, she, like, makes fun of him with these stereotypes that I didn't quite understand. But it is very interesting and refreshing to hear, like, stereotypes from different countries about, like, the own people within their countries. And then the phone call or the FaceTime kind of gets glitchy, and you see, like, a man's face for a second, I think. It's so fucking weird. And then she, like, because it cut out because she's in the country, obviously, girlie, you're not going to get the best service out there. And he says the Wi-Fi is spotty. You can tell, so there'll be moments when they always seem to be when she's alone with her thoughts, I believe. She starts thinking back to her husband. He was definitely verbally abusive. It shows a flashback. They are sitting, and again, bathed in orange light. He's sitting on the bed, and she's sitting on, like, a couch in their bedroom. Cool. Again, these people are way above what my financial abilities are. And he tells her, I'll kill myself. She says, fuck off. And he says, you have to live with it. You wanted to divorce me, it's the same as killing me. And holy shit, her crying and screaming is phenomenal. That sounds really fucked up. The acting is phenomenal. It looks like again, I'm probably gonna reference in the same 3 fucking movies, Hereditary, Midsummer, and The Lighthouse, because those are, like, 3 of my favorites, and those 3 have phenomenal acting. But her crying and screaming kind of reminded me of, I believe, Alex Wolff, who played Peter in Hereditary. His crying, I was like, that feels like a little boy genuinely, or not, he's not a little boy, but there's the little boy inside him crying out for his mom to stop what she's doing. I'm not going to say more because I don't want to spoil Hereditary if you haven't seen it. There goes my phone. I'm sorry about that. Again, I'm, like, holding up my phone so I can see my notes because I'm in a closet. But yeah, and the scene ends there right after she's, like, crying, and he's basically like, oh, she's asking for divorce, and he's saying, like, well, if you do that, I'm gonna kill myself. Fuck that. Hey, I know probably everyone listening to this, especially if you're, like, one of my coworkers, hey guys, you guys probably know this, but if someone threatens to kill themselves, fuck that. That's them doing that, and that's them trying to hold it against you. And I feel there's a lot of trying to turn yourself into the victim in this movie, and it becomes more apparent later on. But yeah, and then it cuts back to her unpacking her clothes, and she had been just, like, thinking about it again. And then I noticed that her wardrobe is mostly, like, gentle, like, soft brown, green, very light, more, I'd say wintry. I don't know this shit. It's just, like, kind of in that range of, like, very gentle green, like forest green and light brown, until later on. And she's going for a walk, and there's so many gorgeous nature shots. Again, whoever is responsible for those, fantastic job. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The music is back for the walk. And it seems to be that the music is there when she's by herself and she's happy is when there's good, happy music. And it's really good. She, like, goes down this, like, path off of the path from her rental. And I thought, oh boy, that's going to be hard to get back up because she struggled to get down. And I was right. It starts raining. She goes under a tree, and the thunder times with the music. Fantastic. And then she walks up on the tunnel. And if you've seen any trailer for this movie, you know what tunnel I'm talking about. It's the tunnel. The music stops right as she approaches it. And I wrote here, I am looking for men, because oh god, there just kept being so many, like, lingering shots of just, like, you know, the area around her even after she's walked out of the shot, which was pretty good at building up my paranoia of, like, there's gonna be a man in the background. There was one pretty cool shot where Miss Salem, cut it out. There's two pretty cool shots where, one, it's from behind her, and her entire body is covering the other side of the tunnel, so it looks like she's just standing in front of this, like, black void. And there's another where it's from, like, halfway through the tunnel, and you can see the beautiful greenery behind her, but she is, like, a silhouette. Echoing should not work like that. The way the echoing works, I'm 90% sure the echo wouldn't work like that, because you hear, like, cause it was like, like, you know, in the trailer, and she makes a little song, and she seems very happy. It's kind of cute. But it, like, the first, like, like, echoes for, like, a minute, and I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. And I said man-sighted because, on the other side of the tunnel, she sees, like, a man, and the reason I started calling this man Fox Man is because he makes a screaming fox noise every time it is implied that he's following her. And if you've lived in, like, a country-ish area, or if you just, like, had a phase where you hyperfixated on foxes like I did, you'll know that foxes make this weird fucking screaming noise, and he makes that noise every time he's, like, following her. And he starts running from the other side of this huge-ass tunnel, and she's like, you know, fuck that, and turns and leaves, and she misses the trail because she, like, walks right past it. The music is back to be scary, and it's so interesting. There's, like, a blurry shot of her running towards the camera from, like, a distance away, and you're like, what the fuck? And it's because the thing is focusing on this little dandelion tuft floating, and she stops and notices it, and then looks at this abandoned building, and she's kind of like, oh shit, like, she's going off from this abandoned building. She kind of, like, looks at it, and the movie returns to it later. I don't know what the fuck is up with that. What the hell is up with that abandoned building? Maybe I think they say it's where Foxman was sleeping. I don't fucking know, though. And she turns, and there's, like, slopes around this little abandoned building, and she climbs up one, and she goes past, like, this abandoned, like, little, like, gathering of buildings. Wouldn't say a town. It's, like, 3 or 4 buildings, and she, like, hops a fence near it, and there's, like, a meadow she's walking in, and she stops, and she looks back at the buildings, and you can tell, everyone who has thought someone was pursuing them, you've had this moment where you're like, I'm just fucking crazy. You can tell that look on her face, she's like, oh, like, god damn it, I was just being paranoid. There's no one following me. And she goes to take a picture of the abandoned building, and man-sighted, so is his dick. There is a weird pale man in her picture, and he's standing by the buildings, and his dick is out, and there was, like, 5 or 6 boys behind me, and they all just whispered, penis, 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 like, oh wow, penis. I was like, dude, yeah. Music back, and it's these unnerving wails, and it's this sudden shot of outside of a building in, like, a city-ish area, and it takes you a moment to see her husband's dead body on the ground in front of the building, and it doesn't even, like, be like, whoa, look at this. It's just, like, you're like, whoa. And then it shows, like, a shot of her, like, walking up on him. The gore is great. Effects are great. He's, like, so in front of their building, there was, like, a spiky fence, and he, like, partially landed on that, and it, like, one of the spikes, like, sliced his forearm from, like, right above the elbow up to, like, his hand. So it, like, sliced his forearm in half. Let's say, imagine it's in between your, if you make, like, a live long and prosper sign, in between those fingers, all the way down to your elbow. Fucked, right? And, like, one of his eyes is all red. I don't know if that's what happens when you fall a long way. And then his, like, legs are fucked up because he landed on them, probably. And it's just her, like, looking at it. And then it's her suddenly back at the rental. She's in the tub. I noticed she had a necklace on, and she never ever takes it off, and she didn't take it off for the tub. I don't know if anyone else has a necklace like that or jewelry like that. I have a piece of jewelry that I really cherish from my girlfriend, but I take it off to, like, shower and sleep and shit. So, it's never brought up, it's never explained. Maybe it's just something near and dear she has from her childhood. I don't know. She also uses her phone while she's in the tub, girl, and, like, sends a picture of the village or the abandoned village she took to Riley, her friend. She brushes her teeth. Don't know why I had to write that down. I said electric toothbrush, red room. Great notes, Patch. She actually lied to Jeffrey earlier. She can play the piano, and she starts playing it beautifully. I know. Door's open. There's also this, like, so far out of her wardrobe, like, different from anything else she's worn, this, like, pink dress that seems, like, fairly old. I don't remember the name of the show, but think of, like, Victorian, I guess. It's just, like, a very old-timey dress, and it's this soft pink, and it doesn't really fit the rest of her outfits, and she starts wearing it from when she's playing the piano until, I think, the end of the movie. And as she plays the piano, it's very gorgeous. It actually reminds me of the main theme from Over the Garden Wall. I, like, for a second thought it was, and I was like, whoa, are they just playing this in this movie? But no, it's just a similar song. As she plays it, there's, like, a few gorgeous shots of, like, apples in the tree, and fields, and, like, swamp water, and flowers, and trees with moss. And then, she stops, and she's eating a grapefruit. I don't know if that has any symbolism. Probably, maybe. And she's doing some work, it sounds like. And she puts some AirPods in, and it's a very interesting way of showing that, or of having us not always hear, like, the other side of the conversation. Wanted to say this earlier. Oh, my sister's cat is hitting me. Wanted to say this earlier. The conversation in this is very realistic. There's, in movies, it's like, oh, you gotta do a million bajillion takes, so not only is the acting right, but so no one fucks up their lines. But in this, like, they stutter, they mishear each other. It's pretty good. She's talking about, like, work. And there's, like, a bajillion windows on the rental house, and outside you see a fox man with his penis out again. Hooray! He's covered in scrapes and bumps. He looks terrible. Maybe I'm biased because I do not like penises. And she, like, finishes her conversation with a coworker and then starts FaceTiming her friend so she can show her a tour of the manor. And the whole time you see the man walking in the background, and sometimes the camera is even like, oh, look what he's doing. Like, he's, like, right up against her fucking window staring at her. And she, like, shows the conservatory, which, again, rich person room. And you see the front door is open briefly. Fuck that. And then she's like, oh, look, and in the garden you can see. And then she's, like, showing the friend the garden, and then she sees the man, and she's like, I gotta go. She calls 999. Cool. She sees the front door, and and she fucking goes and locks it. But I noticed there are 3 women other than Harper in this movie. There is the woman on the other side of the emergency service phone. There is a woman cop, and there is Riley. And all of the women in this movie are very supportive of Harper. And, it kind of helps you feel this, like, yeah, there are people, other women and AFAB people are going to believe you and support you and do their best to help you because they know what you're feeling. And it's a great thing, but, they can't always be there, and that's kind of where the horror is in this movie. She, calls 999, and the woman is like, we'll get you someone there as fast as we can. And she runs, and she closes the front door and locks it. And he reaches his arm through the mail slot. I'm so fucking glad we don't have those in America, because fuck that. And then we don't, get an ending to that scene quite, because we cut back again to Harper and James, her husband. He's like, she's texting her friend, Riley, and then he comes in and grabs the phone, and he's like, because she said, he's scaring me, and Riley's like, what is he doing now? And she's about to answer, and he's like, I'm scaring you. You're making yourself into the victim. And, I feel like anyone, again, in an abusive relationship can probably relate way too much. I haven't been personally, but from, what I've heard, this is, he's trying to twist it back on her when really he's, the aggressor and shit. He's like, what are you trying to hide from me? And she says, it's my phone. And as someone who obviously values their privacy, I feel that I have, nothing to hide on my phone, but it makes me so nervous when other people are on my phone for no fucking reason. But she's like, it's my phone, and good for you, girl. Even if someone is your spouse, I feel like you deserve to have a bit of privacy or sense of self away from them, And after that, he hits her. And she, stumbles back and falls to the ground in their kitchen, and then it's back to, current time. They fucking got him. They got the Foxman. The cops did. It's 1 man and 1 woman, again, played by the guy who plays, every man. And the woman cop sits down with her, and she's like, must have been frightening, I understand, but he's harmless. And Harper is just like, yeah, thank you. She said, I'm glad you were nearby. And the cop says, me too. Which, I feel like aside from the operator, because that's, a scary moment, every moment with, women in this movie is comforting. And, again, it kind of helps show the sort of, how people, specifically AFAB people, women find kinship in each other and comfort each other. Then she's wearing the pink dress. So she had put on a brown sweater, I believe. The music is still gone, by the way. I think it was there for the tense scene with the man reaching through the mail slot. It is gone now. She goes to a church. She's wearing a green coat over her dress now. The music is back, but it's just wailing. She's in this empty church. It's gorgeous, and there's this statue that has a man face, and on the other side of it is a woman face with tits and a vagina. Cool. And it flashes back to after he hit her, after James hit Harper, and she's just screaming, pushing him out, you'll never see me again. And good for her. And he's trying to be oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. If someone hits you, do what Harper did, get them the fuck out of there. Even if they're oh, I'm sorry. No, they're not. They hit you, they hurt you. That's not okay. And then the music swells with her just screaming in the church. It's like it flashes to it being dark out and the church being all orange, and then it goes back to normal, and it's probably just like her thinking back to that moment with James. She walks out of the church, and again, you've probably seen this in the trailer, and there's like a little boy sitting on like these steps, and he has this mask. It looks like Marilyn Monroe, kind of. It's like a woman face with yellow hair, and she's like, hi, and he's like, hello, and she's like, who are you? What the fuck? And he's like, do you want to play hide and seek? You hide, I'll seek. I bet you're good at hiding. Fuck that. You don't have to be a woman to be like, this fucking sucks. This is scary as shit. Then a priest comes up and is like, Samuel, who is like the little boy, he's like, leave her alone. She said no. And he's like, no, but I want to. And he's like, well, she made it clear she doesn't want to. Maybe she'll do it later. Consent, parallels there. And he, like, is like, fuck off. And the priest says, you first. And then Samuel goes, stupid bitch, and puts the mask back on and leaves. And she's kind of like, oh, thanks, that sucked. The priest goes, you're in pain, yeah? Thought you were. She said, he was like, I thought you were praying, but, she was just kind of screaming. He's like, you're tormented. And she's like, no. And he's like, well, are you haunted? And she's like, oh, yeah, that's it. That's the word. And then she tells him about how James hit her, how she screamed and threw him out. And apparently, and this is not, we don't see this, he tried, because again, it's all from her perspective, he apparently forced his way into, the apartment above them, tried to get back into their apartment through the balcony, and fell or let himself go. And she said, I was looking out, he was looking in, it was like we could see each other. Could he see me? That's what haunts me. And, fuck, this is, her speech right here is one of, like, you're like, oh, she's acting. It's so good. It feels very realistic. And it's like this person pouring their heart out. And I think that James fell. I don't think it matters, but he did. As he's falling by, you kind of see it in slow-mo, because it's probably a moment she replays in her head over and over. He looks, like, scared and startled, like he probably didn't mean to. He also has no shoes on or socks, so he's just, like, barefoot. Cool. The priest puts his hand on her knee, and he's like, you see, I think you need to be understood. You see him, like, that moment when you close your eyes, ask, oh, if only, if only. She says, yeah, exactly, and she's crying, and he takes the hand off, her knee. And he was like, well, it was the screaming. I knew it because the screaming. And she's like, oh, what? He wasn't screaming. And he's like, oh, no, you were screaming. And again, if you've seen the trailer, you know what's coming next, probably. He's like, oh, you drove him to it. And she's like, what? I didn't. And he's like, did you let him apologize? Men strike women all the time. That's just something that happens. And if you had let him apologize, he'd still be alive. Isn't that what you ask yourself? And she says, fuck off, and leaves. It's not funny when you explain it, but if you're watching the movie, it is fucking funny. He just gets out chapstick and puts it on, and there's, like, a chunk on his lip, and he just licks it, and it's like, what the fuck? And then it shows, like, he's, like, touching the bench with his weird hands, and then it just shows a rotting, female deer, a female deer. All the noises go quiet, and we go into the eye. You hear her tunnel singing. You see the vagina statue, and then it zooms back out of its eye, and you see it's more composed. Then it shows Foxman, I think in the abandoned building that the movie was kind of fixated on for a little bit. and he's, like, slicing his forehead, and there's just blood running down his face and dripping off his chin. It's a very striking visual, and then he puts a leaf into the hole he just made. What the fuck? Then it shows a bunch of landscapes, and then we see Jeffrey in a bar, and he's playing, a crossword, and he goes, "Come on, Jeffrey, fire up the engines," to himself. God, I'm gonna steal that. Come on, Pat, fire up the engines when you're running out of brain juice, like I am all the time. And Harper walks in, he goes, "Mrs. Oh, no, Miss." And he does not let her pay. Again, earlier, Jeffrey didn't let her bring in her own luggage. He doesn't let her pay here. And later on in the movie, he does not let her, like, go check out, like, what's outside of the house when all the shit goes down by herself. Because, it's, sort of kind misogyny, but it's still misogyny, thinking that women can't do things by themselves and that you need to be their knight in shining armor and stuff and all that. I don't know. This movie shows, like, a good fair range of the misogyny that people face. And then the cop comes in and starts drinking, and they're talking about, like, the Fox man, and apparently no one told Jeffrey, who owns the property, about him. And the cop is like, "Oh, we had him." Or Harper's like, "Oh, I'm glad that you have him." And the cop says, "Had him. We released him." And Harper's like, "What the fuck?" And he said, "Not much to charge him with." And she said, "He was stalking me. I saw him twice." And he's like, "Well, maybe it seems like he didn't see you." Fuck that. I've had so many experiences like that where I'm like, I think this person was following me, and, a man in my life will be like, "Are you sure?" Like, it sounds like they were just, like, also at the same place repeatedly. Fuck that. Believe people. Even if they're being paranoid, again, it takes once time of being wrong. It's better to be safe than sorry. And then she, like, abruptly leaves and starts heading back to the manor, and Fox man makes his weird ass noise, and she, like, again, you can tell she's like, I'm being paranoid. Like, she looks around and she's like shakes her head at herself. You can tell she's beating herself up, being like, "You're just being paranoid." And she keeps walking, and then you see somewhere in the background that Foxman, like, was indeed following her and is still following her. She goes back to the manor, and she FaceTimes Riley, and she's like, "Don't tell me there's more. I'm done. It's a very sweet moment before the fucking terrifying finale, where Riley is like, where she just pours her heart out and explains, like, the guy called her a bitch, how the priest tried to blame James's death, and how the cops released the guy. Again, they called him harmless. He was covered in, like, scrapes and shit. He was buck-ass naked, trying to get in this person's house. Like, that is a dangerous person. Anyway, and Riley is like, "You know what? Fuck that. I'm coming. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna eat ice cream. We're gonna, make, like, good meals, and we're gonna laugh. And if that man comes and tries to fuck with us, I'll chop his dick off and make him eat it." And yeah, that's something that Harper obviously needed to hear. And she's like, "You know what, Riley? Yeah, come on." And she tries to, like, give her the address so that she can come, but like, their connection keeps cutting off, and again it glitches out and it looks like a man face. Like, when it glitches, it's so strange. And she eventually just goes and shares her location with Riley because she can't call anymore, and she's like, "Dude, just text it to me." And she does, and then it says, "I already know where you are, stupid bitch." Ugh. Disgusting. Hated that feeling of dread of, like, I don't know, I've never been in a situation similar to that, but, fuck that. Fuck, like, accidentally giving your location to probably, obviously, the little boy, Samuel. And there's bright lights outside. It's because there's movement detection lights outside. And she goes and she looks, and it's the cop, and he's just standing there. And I'm like, dude, don't go out there. What the hell? And she does, though. And she's like, why are you back? What's happened? And he doesn't say anything. And she's like, is the guy back? Did something happen? Like, do you need me? And then he's just, like, not responding. And she's like, what the, like, why aren't you saying anything? And then the lights turn off, and they turn back on, and the cop's just gone. And just, like, the apples just start raining from the tree. And then there's a POV camera, like, running towards her, and I'm like, fuck this. Oh, God. Again, worst nightmare, being, like, right outside and just seeing something running at you. And you see it's one of the men who is sitting in the background of the bar. They're kind of, like, leering at her. And she runs in, slams the door, locks it, and says, why are you doing this? And again, you probably heard that in the trailer. She goes to the kitchen and gets a knife, and something throws a chair through the window, and she falls down, and I noticed it was the same position as when James had hit her. There is, like, you know, the counters sort of, like, form a corner, and she had fallen into that when James hit her, and she's, like, sitting against it now. And we don't see the intruder, but it's, like, they pull the chair back outside, and she, like, backs all the way out of the kitchen and into the hallway in front of the front door, and Jeffrey, like, knocks it in and is like, what the fuck is happening? And then he, like, is like, oh, well, let's see. And she's like, no, don't go in there. And he goes into the kitchen, and there's a raven on the floor. And he's like, oh, poor thing. Like, and it's still alive. It's kind of flapping a little. And he picks it up and goes, oh, don't look, miss. And then snaps its neck. And he goes, broken wing. Nothing to be done. What the fuck? Yes, there is. You can rescue birds. I rescued a bird when I was, like, 5 with a broken wing and rehabilitated it. What the fuck, Jeffrey? Anyway, he thinks it's just the bird. He's like, oh, it must have given you quite the fright, miss. Like, I think she could have been told the difference between a human and a bird in her house, or in the house. Anyway, she's like, but I swear I saw someone out there. It was the cop. And he's like, what? And he says, as your landlord, it's my job to protect you, so I'm gonna go out there. And she's like, Jeffrey, no. And he's kind of, like, insisting, like, oh, you're a damsel in distress, which I'm pretty sure everyone's a damsel in distress if they're being attacked. And then he just, like, turns to her right at the door, and he says, you have the qualities of a failed military man. And she's like, what? Because, yeah, what? But he said his father had said that to him when he was 7 years old. And he's like, I guess I should show him that he was wrong now. And he goes out, and the lights go out, and there's soft music. It's, like, I think strings. It's very eerie. And he's going around, and you can tell he's nervous, but he's trying to be brave for her. And he goes, and he, like, is waving around, and he kind of does that thing from Signs where he's like, I'll, kick your ass. I mean, he doesn't say I'll kick your ass. He's like, well, I don't know what you think you're doing. Like, if you think it's funny, like, it's not, so fuck off. And then he turns to Harper, and he's like, well, I think I got it. And then the lights go out, and Jeffrey's gone. The Foxman is back, dick out, and he's got leaves all over, and there's thorns growing out of his skin, and he just, like, stalks towards her, and then he blows a bunch of dandelion fluffs towards her, and it's slow motion, and it's just her face, and she's crying, and it's slow motion, and she's, like, going, like, falling or leaning backwards, and she inhales one of them. There's probably so much symbolism here that I'm, like, missing. She's suddenly under, like, orange water, screaming, and then it's her screaming at James, and then it's the statue in her apartment in like the master bedroom, and then it's her like running towards that abandoned building and slamming like her hands against it, which did not happen. She runs inside, suddenly like shuts the door, and it's like shows her slamming James at again, and it's orange lights. The man reaches through the mail slot, and he's being like gentle this time and slow, and it's sort of like, you know, I've seen people compare it to a proposal. For me, it's just kind of like, you know, offering to hold someone's hand when you're not sure if they want to. And she takes it and she kind of caresses it, and you can tell she's like, yeah, I'll be gentle if you're gentle. But then it just like grabs her and like yanks her. She screams and stabs the arm, and it goes all the way through, and she like pushes it through, and it makes this like noise. And then since it's like through the mail slot, you know, the mail slot is horizontal and the knife is vertical, it starts just trying to pull its arm out. And so the knife slowly cuts down its entire arm, and it's excruciatingly on screen, and it's phenomenal. It's a little CG, but I still think it's very good. There's a lot of blood, and the music just cuts off once the mail slot closes and the hand is out. And obviously there's the comparison to like how James' arm looked when he fell, and his arm fell on the spiky fence. And then she hears this strange like noise of something scraping against something else, and it's the little boy Samuel. He has the dead raven on the counter, and he's put the lady mask over its face, and he's just like slowly pushing it back and forth. And the imagery, if you see it, the imagery is obvious. It looks like sex or sexual assault. It's hard to fucking explain without you seeing the visuals. And he has the fucked up arm where it's like, you know, split down through the hands. And he says, "You really hurt me." And both parts of the hand are still working, by the way. If your hand got fucked up like that, it would not work. And he says, like, "You hurt me. Look what you did. You're mean." Like, yeah, dude, you fucking attacked her. People are allowed to retaliate if you attack them. You'll play now, because we're gonna play hide and seek. Fuck that. Again, you probably heard him say, like, "Oh, we're gonna play hide and seek. You hide, I'll seek," in the trailer. He says, like, she says, "I'll cut you. I'll do it." And he says, "I don't think you will, but you should. It'll be the last chance you get." And she backs out of the kitchen and slams the door. And she starts counting from 1 to 10. And you hear Samuel on the other side of the door, like, "I know where you are. You should start hiding." And she just keeps counting. And at first I was like, oh, fuck yeah. She's gonna, like, open the door and attack him, right? No, she counts down to a jump scare, because the front door bursts open, and now it's one of the men from the bar, again with a fucked up hand. And she runs into the bathroom and closes the door, and is kind of pointing the knife at the door, and then the door is opened, and it's the priest, and his hand is fucked up too. He just starts like saying poetry, I guess, about Agamemnon. Holy shit. Agamemnon. There we go. Being dead. And I don't know. I wasn't really listening. I was just kind of like, huh? And he starts like washing his fucked up hand. And it's very grotesque and interesting, and I enjoyed it. She says, "What the fuck are you?" And he responds, but it's so quiet that I didn't hear it. And I wrote, "What? Speak up." And literally, like, the guy behind me going, "What did he say?" I still don't fucking know what he said. And then he says, "When did you lose your virginity?" What? And he says, "I've been thinking about it. Legs open, vagina open, mouth open. You're probably an expert in carnality. Those things now exist in my mind. this is the power this is the control you exert. Beauty created to undo or be undone. You're singing to me, not as Ulysses, but as sailor. I mean, it's probably, like, pretty obvious, like, parallel to, like, people who are assaulted being blamed, like, oh, you made me think you were sexy because you're so sexy, it's your fault. I think of the movie Revenge, phenomenal movie, where he's like, well, you're so damn beautiful, people can't resist you. Like, no, it's not people's faults for being hot, so shut the fuck up. And he just gets on the floor and, like, grabs at her dress, and he's like, he calls it, like, a cave, a slit, and he says, like, dash me to pieces on it. And he says, and she puts the knife up to his neck, and he says, oh, it's the tip of the blade. And then she, like, stands up. He stands up, and he puts, like, both, so, like, 2 of each finger of his fucked up hand on either side of his shoulder, so, like, the nasty bits is touching her neck. And he goes and he, like, pushes her up against the sink, and you're like, oh, fuck, this woman's gonna be assaulted. Gross. Gross, gross, gross. And I'm like, oh, fuck, am I gonna have to, like, watch an assault on screen? I don't want to see that. And then she stabs him, and he, like, groans. And then he falls, and, the noise goes out right when he hits his head, like, on his way down. Phenomenal. And then it's her tunnel singing, and the music, it's, like, this gentle guitar, and it flashes between her, like, running out of the house and her, like, running out of the house, but stopping and, like, laying on the floor. And she, goes and starts to drive her car away, but then suddenly Jeffrey's in the road, and she fucking hits him! And his, like, legs are fucked up, and he's, like, trying to, like, you know, stand, and he, like, walks over, opens the door, and, like, drags her out, and he's like, oh, Miss Harper, and, like, corrects himself and says, like, Mrs. Merlot, and then he gets in and drives away. I don't know, like, I was like, okay, I guess, like, just there he goes. Anyway, oh god, we're getting to, like, the part that it took me a whole ass day to get the courage to talk about this movie again, because I was excited to talk about the rest, but not about the ending scene, because it's so strange. And then she looks at the sky, and it's just, like, the Milky Way now. Hi again, Salem. Then the car is coming back, and it's just a shot of him, like, screaming in the car, and it's pretty great. And it's, like, gunning her down, and you're like, oh, fuck. And it's a very well-crafted, tense scene of her, like, running, and then she gets to the manor, and he fucking, like, Tokyo drifts to get her, and she goes into the garden, and the car rams into the rock wall, and, like, the front of it breaks, and she gets into, like, right next to the apple tree, and she, like, gets down on her hands and knees, and you're like, oh, she's, like, broken. Honestly, me too, girl. And then here comes Naked Foxman, and, like, his face is all fucked up. It's, like, becoming leaves, and it's, like, part flesh, part leaf, and it's really gross, like, covered in moss and shit. And his feet are all broken, and he starts, like, drooling and singing, and then he's pregnant, and he's still singing, and then he's silently screaming, and then he has a vagina, and he's giving birth to a thing. Oh, and by the way, he has the fucked up hand, and so did Jeffrey when Jeffrey got hit by the car. And the baby is screaming, it has the fucked up hand, and it's dragging itself away from, like, the body of Foxman, because Foxman is now dead. And I was like, oh shit, is it her? But I'm just face blind. No, it's the little boy, Samuel. God, this ending scene is so weird. And then it starts yelling, and now it's giving birth, and it's the priest with the fucked up hand, and honestly, her face, she's like, fuck this, and she goes to walk into the house, and, like, the blood coming off of all of this is steaming, and it's really interesting visuals. And it, like, follows her into the house, and I'm like, girl, don't look at it. Like, don't look at it. Why are you still watching it? And it's pregnant again, and it's singing again, and I'm like, fuck. And now it has a vagina between its shoulders. Why is she still watching? And then out comes Jeffrey with the fucked up hand, and it stands up, and now it's crying, and it's pregnant again, and it's like, she's like she walks away. She looks sympathetic, but she's also like, ugh. And it's like daytime outside when, like, just a moment ago it was like dark, like middle of the night. And then, like, instead of like getting a vagina, this thing has like feet coming out of its mouth, and it's like broken feet, and then it like falls over, and it's James comes out of it with a fucked up hand, and he's like limping toward her, buck ass naked. I've seen so many penises in this movie, more than I ever wanted to see in my life. And then he sits his bloody ass self on the couch, and she had went and gotten the axe, and I was like, oh great, like, put an end to the whatever the fuck is happening, like, please kill it. But then she just sits next to him, and he says, look at me, Harper, my ankles are snapped, my organs are crushed. I'm pretty sure he said something about his hand, but I was like too traumatized to remember. And he says, you did this. And she says, James, what do you want from me? And he says, your love. And she says, yeah. And then there's gentle acoustic music, and then the title card of Men. And then it's just like shots of Riley driving, and you can see like what happened was real. It wasn't just in her head, because Riley is seeing it too. Like, the car is smashed up against the wall. There's, like, blood all over the garden and into the house. And, you know, she's kind of like, oh, shit! I don't know if this is notable to the whole color thing, but Riley is wearing a blue dress and a trench coat, and also, she's pregnant. I don't know if that's important to the plot or not, and I don't want to think about it after, like, reliving the scenes with the ending. And Harper is sitting outside, like, well away from all the stuff, and she's smiling and, like, enjoying the nature, and she's happy to see her, Riley, and then the credits start rolling. So, yeah, I just walked you through the entirety of the movie Men. I shaved 40 minutes off of it, so you're welcome. It is an hour and 40 minutes. Man, I might make a follow-up episode with all the symbolism and what it could mean, or you know what, I could just try now. I think it really has to do with, like, how James was part of a cycle of misogyny, with, like, the whole, like, the men, like, birthing each other thing. I think it's really showing that it's a cycle, that it's taught, all the forms of misogyny. And in the end, he's like, I just want your love. And really, his love comes at the expense of her happiness. And should she really have to give that up to make him happy? No. And also, she didn't do that to him. He did that to himself. All the things that the creature is doing, she never does anything to it except stab it, but that's in self-defense. She doesn't even try to axe it. Like, everything that happens to it is self-imposed. And, yeah, again, that's the movie Men. I was really hoping that Foxman was, like, some sort of demon or something, but no, it's just the patriarchy in society, I guess. Yeah, well, thank you for joining me on my first episode of my podcast, Horror Himbo, or just the Horror Himbo. I'm not sure which one yet. I am Patch, your Horror Himbo, and next episode is either going to be, technically episode 0, where I kind of explain my goals with this podcast and what it's about, maybe it'll be my girlfriend and I reviewing a movie, or it'll be my sister joining me after watching Saw for the first time, or it'll be one of my coworkers or friends reviewing talking about one of their favorite movies with me. But thank you so much for listening. Again, we are out of milk, and now we are out of cheese. I'm not sorry, and I will not pay rent. I will see you next time.